Hello, this is the Mae B Mindful Podcast, and I am your host, Hannah Mae. I'm a mother of 6, conscious birth instructor and educator, spiritual growth facilitator, and certified hypnotist. This podcast is about inspiring hope, expanding awareness and consciousness in order to revolutionize the way we live and experience our lives. You can expect thought-provoking episodes each week spanning a range of topics, drawing from both my own journey of transformation and healing and working with others. I hope you find this podcast to be informative, refreshing, illuminating, and instrumental in your own soul's evolution and growth. Let's jump right in. Welcome back to the Mae B Mindful Podcast. I'm your host, Hannah Mae, and this week's episode is on birth, childbirth, home birth, calm birth, joyful birth, birth as nature intended. I got a little overwhelmed when I was like, how am I going to tell them everything? So this is really just going to be a little sliver of some of my experiences, why I'm excited, and my hope and goal here is to, if you have any apprehension, is to shift your perspective around this so that you leave feeling as excited, inspired, and hopeful about birth as I do, and something that you look forward to, whether you've had birth experiences that you didn't enjoy, or whether you're a first-time mom, or whether you've never had a baby and you don't even know if you're going to, but now you're going to be like, damn, that's cool. I want to do that. So that's my goal. I love these conversations that I've been having with people since I had my first home birth, where it does get people's attention because they want to know about that. And most people have some concerns about this, or they just loathe and fear it as something that they have to deal with and get through and like maybe block out or anesthetize from in order to get their baby. So in order to get the prize, they have to go through this horrible thing. And this is a result, unfortunately, of these messages and this rhetoric that's being pushed into our culture, on our women and on our families, that birth is dangerous, that birth is a medical event, and that it has to be painful. Through a variety of outlets, whether it's movies that depict birth poorly, or these birth shows, or well-meaning friends, or medical professionals. And the fact that other women, when I have these conversations with them, are so attentive and they leave feeling inspired, and they say things like, I might call you when I have a baby, tells me that this is not information that people are coming across on the regular, and the majority of the information is in opposition to this and leading to a really negative, unfortunate view of birth, which is really sad to me because birth is incredible. Birth is an incredible, transformative, pivotal moment in a woman's life, in a family's life, and when we can view it differently, we will experience it differently. So without further ado, here we go. So how do we become empowered? How do we access this information and remove those challenges and impediments if they are unnecessary, considering that the design is the same for you as it is for me, as it is for every other human in most cases? So I've had 6 home births. The last 4 I utilized hypnobirth techniques and practices and self-hypnosis, and this was a real game changer and just kind of blew my mind. I can't tell you how many moms I've talked to, some of them even in the medical profession, that have said, I really want to have kids one day, but I'm really scared of giving birth and I don't know if I can do it. And when I hear that, I do my best to reassure them, because there's not a whole lot of reassurance that goes on, because not everybody is having this experience. But this experience, I believe, is accessible for anybody. And so sometimes I leave these conversations and people say to me, oh my gosh, you're amazing. And I'm like, thanks. But here's the thing. Birth is amazing. The design is amazing. It is this natural physiological process that is already amazing. The design is flawless. It doesn't really have a lot to do with me. The part that has to do with me is that I learned through a practice how to get out of the way and allow it to unfold as nature intended without my interference. And so with any natural physiological process that does have a flow where it happens on its own, like digesting your food, your heart beating, a wound healing. If you provide the correct and appropriate conditions and you're healthy, then those things happen on their own without you having to think about it, without you having to intervene. Whereas if you were to kind of hypervigilantly stare at a cut and maybe over clean it or rub it too much or poke it or, expose it to things that weren't good for it, maybe harmful bacteria, then you might get an infection and then you might cause more problems and impede and slow that healing process. But your body heals on its own. Our bodies are naturally self-healing organisms, and there's nothing we actually have to do to make that happen. It's just already like God figured that one out. We just have to get with the program. And so birth is really the same. And a lot of women are under the misconception that they have to be told how to birth or they have to learn how to birth, when actually it's instinctual and it's already built in. I think the reason why this subject is so fascinating to people, I never walk away from a birth conversation where you're like, that was a stupid conversation. I always at least leave feeling really lifted up and inspired. And I think that is as a result of the dynamic of the connection through this incredible conversation, because we have all experienced birth ourselves at one point. It is, in fact, a very pivotal part of our own life's experience, and the memory of that is really pressed into the fibers of our being and our consciousness. The memory is held in our body of that birth, whether our conscious mind remembers it or not. Our subconscious, our unconscious does. And there's a lot of incredible research and studies about how impactful life in utero and our birth actually is in shaping who we are and how we see ourselves and how we see the world that we're coming into. And I'll just say, as a hypnotist, I have worked with clients who have regressed back to their birthday and they remember clear and vivid details about that, and not dissimilar in utero as well, and what they were thinking and the things they were noticing and the tone or the environment outside that was impacting their experience, and how those things, positive or negative, can be carried into life in the present. And so it is pretty incredible. And I think that to put an emphasis and look forward to with positive expectation our birthing day, and to view it as our baby's first birthday, because that's what it is. As parents, we put a lot of emphasis and importance on birthdays and making the child feel special and planning it so that it is a day for them to remember and a day that we remember. And so there's no reason why we shouldn't put just as much importance on this sacred day and do everything we can to provide the best possible experience for ourselves and our babies and our family. I've also had some people say to me, that's irresponsible. Birth is dangerous. And yes, if you want to magnify that small percentage of complications rate, and I'm not talking about complications that result from unnecessary interventions, I'm talking about complications that are just naturally occurring in that like roughly 5%. I'm not going to focus on that today because I want to talk about the 95%, which is the majority. I am the first to tip my hat to the medical professionals, and I have profound gratitude for skilled physicians, obstetricians, and our medical and scientific advancements so that we can intervene and smooth out a complication, save a life of mother or child. That is wonderful, and I'm so grateful for that. But as with any sort of scientific or technological advancements, sometimes things tend to swing real far and we lose that balance. And so when it becomes viewed through this medical lens, then it can become scary. So I'm going to just share with you, my first birth was planned as a hospital birth because I was not really yet comfortable with the idea of a home birth. Towards the end of the birth class, which was geared towards natural childbirth, I started to become more comfortable with the idea. My mother had had me at home. I had actually witnessed my second youngest brother, born in a birthing center, and I was present for that birth when I was 9 years old, which I really came to see the profound impact of later. At the time, I was kind of like, ooh, that was okay, I don't know, but it came to be something that I really value, an impact of that experience on the way that I birth and see birth, the way that I watched my mother do it, which was really incredible. Once I got comfortable with that idea, I was a little sad that I wasn't having a home birth, but my midwife no longer delivered at home. She had delivery privileges at a couple different hospitals, so that's where I was scheduled to do it. And my baby had other plans. And I really believe that the thing that we want, that we visualize, is really important as a tool in having the kind of birth that we want. So this was sort of this vision that I held in my heart. It was like to have a home birth, but I sort of let it go, and I was like, you know what, next time. And so lo and behold, baby came fast, and hubby had to call midwife, and she was like, can you drive her in? And he said no. She said, well, let me just come check on you. So she got there about an hour later, and I was really laboring at this point. And so in my mind, because my surges up until that point, by the way, surge is a hypnobirthing term for contraction. My surges up until that point were roughly 10 to 15 minutes apart. Very not textbook. I really defied and rewrote the textbook here for my birth, which actually a lot of relaxed and hypnobirthing mothers do, because when they're more relaxed, their surges are able to be more efficient because they're not resisting them. And so you can get a lot more done, and those births are usually quicker than the average. And she got there, she checked me, and I was fully dilated, and she was like, okay, honey, she didn't call my husband honey. She said, go get everything out of my car. So luckily she came ready. So he got everything, including her iPod at the time when people had iPods, and her iced tea. And I had her 15 minutes later. And she said, okay, you're a good home birth candidate. Otherwise you'll have a freeway baby. So I was really grateful for that incredible experience, even though it was like fast and furious. And I was like, what's happening? And it really threw me. I was really in shock afterwards, because in my mind, I was like, average labor, 12 hours for a first-time mom. In my head, I was going, I can't do this for 12 more hours. I can't do this. And then to have her within an hour and a half after that was just sort of like, what happened? And so it was an incredible birth. There's nothing I can say. I can't complain about it. It was pretty epic. But as a result of that, I had a little fear the next time round. And I didn't address that fear. I ignored that fear. And I was like, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. And the problem is that fear kept building and building and building. And it really showed up in my labor when I had my second baby a year and a half later. And the memory in my body felt very fresh. It really showed up in stunting the progress and in a few other ways where I think I was really holding on. And then ultimately, I felt completely trapped under the intensity of that birth. And I experienced it as pain. And it was so overwhelming to me. And I felt so oppressed and trapped by it that after that, again, safe birth, nothing wrong other than that, but it just was too intense for me, and it was not tolerable. And I said, I'm not doing that again. I'm not doing that again. And so my very clear decision when I got pregnant with my third baby 13 months later, when I went to see my midwife, was, and I told her, I kind of put an ultimatum on the situation, myself, whatever, and I just said, I'm not doing that. I am going the intervention route and asking for any narcotic or drug they have to put in me so that I can have a comfortable experience. And so unless I can be guaranteed a different experience, and by the way, I'm like not a narcotics girl is my go-to. I'm sober 21 plus years, not really what I wanted and not in alignment with my ideals, and knowing about the effects of what putting those drugs in my body, how that impacts my baby, and how everything I put in crosses the placenta. But I was like, sorry. And so really I have zero judgment on any woman that wants to go that route if that's what they feel more comfortable doing. However, if that's not what they want, they should know that they don't have to, that there is another way. And so I told my midwife, and my caveat was, unless I can have a different experience and I can experience birth comfortably. And I had seen this video, and this is what inspired me, okay? This is not something you see every day, but I had seen this video somehow of this woman who must have been practicing hypnobirth and utilizing self-hypnosis. And she was deep in trance and she was having a surge, and they lifted up her hand and they put a needle through it. And she just didn't even register. And she was just so relaxed. And I was like, that I could get with. And I've had people since say to me, and at the time, well, that sounds very checked out and disconnected and not present, which I can understand that perspective. But as a result of my own hypnobirths and experience, I can tell you that is actually the opposite of disconnected. It is so profoundly connected within to your birthing body. You're very aware of everything, every sound, every conversation that's going on around you. You just don't care because you are so in tune and deep within your own birthing body for this sacred process that's going on that it doesn't matter. And I've had my own experiences where I've been very deeply focused and relaxed, and there's chit chat, maybe quiet, soft chit chat going on in the background. And I'll notice, like, if someone had a question or they weren't sure about something, I would simply open my eyes, very alertly look over at them, give them the answer, and then go back in. And they would kind of be like, oh, and laugh, And there were times also where I practiced my hypnobirthing where in between surges, where I would be utilizing these visualization techniques and self-hypnosis, I would, in between surges, open my eyes and like crack jokes. And I had this young coconut and they were like laughing at me. They were like, are you on vacation? But I interestingly found that when I did that, I would get a little adrenaline in my body from the excitement of the conversation. And then I would be a little less comfortable for my next surge. And so I found it was better for me to just completely shut off everything on the outside and just stay very meditative. And time distortion is an incredible gift of nature during labor because you really lose all concept of time. It's like you have no idea. I mean, an hour could feel like 2 minutes, and that is real. So when I told my midwife this, and she said, Hannah, I really believe if anybody could do this, you can do this. You could be that woman and you could have that birth if you want. That really hit me, that she had that kind of faith in me, and she had that awareness and understanding that I could have that experience if I wanted it. And I'm so grateful that she said that and she affirmed that for me and acknowledged that, because that's really all I needed. I just really needed someone to be like, yeah, you can do that. So I found a hypnobirthing class and I took the class and I committed 100%. I was like, we're not doing that again. And I did the practice and I practiced all the way up until birth. And anything that I felt like was missing or lacking, I like outsourced and got more tools. I learned different visualization techniques that I felt like would support me. And so cut to my third birth. When the midwife got there, I had been laboring for a little bit. I tend to labor very quickly. And during my first 2 births, I had really intense back labor, like so intense that it was like my husband had to put his entire body weight, like pressing down on my sacrum in order for me to get any relief. It's amazing that my bones just didn't crumble and crush. I found that when I utilized the breath and the tools that I had learned, and I'm already rocking, and I was rolling around on this birthing ball and really allowing that part of my body to relax, even though it started and that discomfort would start to come in, it was like it just drained out and it left, and I didn't have the same experience from that birth onward with that intense back labor. So my midwife got there and she said, I'd like to check you. I was like, I don't want you to check me because I didn't want to be disappointed if I wasn't very far progressed. And she said, I have a feeling you're farther along than you think. You look like you're working really hard. And I was like, really hard. What is she talking about? I was just sitting there with my eyes closed, rolling around, breathing. And I looked at her and I said, what do you mean? She said, you look like you're working really hard to be focused. And I was like, okay, so she checked me and I was 9. It was 9 centimeters. And my husband looked at me and he was like, oh my gosh. And I looked at him and I was like, oh my gosh. And he was like, babe, you're doing it. You're that woman in the video. And I was like, yeah. So I had to like calm myself back down. I got in the tub and then I had my baby. And I got to tell you, like, this was the case from this baby on, okay? In particular with my 3rd, my 4th, and my 5th. The cocktail of hormones, endorphins, oxytocin, all this beautiful cocktail of drugs that the body makes when it's allowed to. When your body is not in a state of fight or flight as the result of fear and tension, which creates your body to release these stress hormones, these catecholamines, which actually are responsible for creating more pain as a result of the way your body reacts to that and then resists the process. I know this is a run-on sentence. The hormones and the cocktail of those feel-good drugs, it's like your body making its own morphine. It is so incredible. And the beauty of that is the more you relax, the more you facilitate that to happen. And so this is a natural anesthetic, okay? I did not experience pain. And I'll tell you, in particular with my 5th birth, the story around that, but I was high for days. I was literally euphoric and high from the experience for days. It was like better than any high I've ever had. And this is why I love my births. And I just think that they're so profound because these fears and these obstacles that come up in us that we get to resolve and push through and surrender into, because that really is the pathway into this experience, is surrender versus resisting and fighting and tension and fear, is just such a faith builder. And it's so empowering. And I think it helped me so much to start to understand the mind and the power of our thoughts and then the experience that we have as a result of that. With my 5th birth, I had this incredible experience where my midwife came and she checked me and I was 4 centimeters. And I was like, ugh, this could go either way. This could just like chill out. I don't know what it's going to look like. The sun was dipping down. She went downstairs to do paperwork. My husband was like, I'm so tired. And I said, take a nap. And he said, what if you have the baby? I was like, I'll wake you up. And he was like, okay. So I'm like, just take a nap. So he took a nap. I was fine. I was comfortable. I was walking around. It was dark. And all of a sudden this thought just sort of like came into my mind. And it was, this might take forever. And I was like, oh no. And it just felt like this impending darkness like gripped me and I felt afraid. And I was like, mm-mm. And I immediately saw that as a fear. And I was like, I do not want that. But it was intense feeling. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to do what I did in practice for my entire birth, for my entire pregnancy, which was put on my CD and listen to it. Now, when I listened to the CD, I probably listened to it a few times a week, which you're supposed to do every day. I did it a few times a week. And every time I listened to it, I would go out. And so I kind of judged the process a little bit. I was like, I'm just falling asleep. What am I actually doing, right? How much benefit is it if I'm just falling asleep? So I would go to sleep. Really, I was deep in trance. And then right when the recording was finished, I would open my eyes and turn it off and get up and go about my day. Or if it was at night and I was going to bed, I would just wake up, turn it off, close my computer, and then go to sleep. So that's what my body was conditioned to do when I listened to this recording. My body just knew to go deeply relaxed. So I was 4 centimeters. I had that feeling. I got in bed. I put the recording on. I went out. I woke up before the recording was over, so probably at around 22 minutes in to my water breaking. and I felt my baby's head engaged. Now, mind you, by this time, I know what that feels like because this is my fifth baby. I'm very aware and connected to the sensations in my body, and I know where I'm at this point. So I'm like, baby's head engaged. I'm 10 centimeters. And I woke my husband up and I said, my water just broke. So I felt that intense pressure, which was the baby's journey down the birth canal. And I was like, it's time to get in the tub. I love water births. My last four were all water births. So I got in the tub and I had her about 20 to 25 minutes later. So this just was so instrumental in showing me that when this between the ears is quiet, there's no issue, right? There's no issue. I didn't need anyone to tell me to push when I wasn't ready to, which by the way, in hypnobirth, you don't push, you breathe your baby down. Pushing is not necessary. Your body has this incredible mechanism where the hormones are released at the right time. And it's called, what is it called? Natural expulsive reflex, NER. You can breathe your baby down just as effectively with no trauma to the baby or no pressure. We'll do a whole nother episode on that. And I had my baby and I was like, okay, that was cool. And then on that note, the biggest challenge with my sixth and final baby, if I'm finished, which people always ask me if I'm going to have more kids. I'm like, I don't know. I never intentionally had six kids. Like, it just happened. Oh my gosh. I don't even want to talk about that or think about that. I'm glad that my plans weren't that effective because it worked out pretty well. So with my sixth birth, I was very comfortable knowing that I could have a comfortable experience. My challenge was really my thinking and my impatience around the timing. And that was my biggest obstacle. And that was what caused me to hold on. And the moment that I had to surrender and I let go of my anxiety around the timing, because I was very comfortable. I was laboring, I was comfortable. I was just so frustrated and so impatient. It was a different time of day. All my other babies were born between 8 and midnight. This one was late morning and I'm like, the day is going by. Not that it matters, but it's just oh my gosh, why is this taking so long? Nothing was wrong, but my midwife said, she said, I wonder when this is going to kick into gear for you, Hannah. And when she asked me that question, without projecting anything onto me other than curiosity, it kind of allowed me to have this moment where I was like, I'm powerless over the timing. And I surrendered. And I just had this exhale and I let go. There was just this, I could feel this inner shift of this letting go. And the very next surge that I had was a different one. And it just kicked it into gear. And then I had her very shortly after that. And those feelings that were coming up in me were so intense, but they were as a result of my thoughts. They were not based in anything else other than my thoughts. And so this really, really demonstrated so clearly to me the need to really have that be our focus. For my fourth birth, I had the gift of coming on Christmas Day, 10 days late, that my midwife was called, but didn't make it in time for. So my husband and I actually delivered our baby by ourselves. And it was sort of like this dream. It was just incredible. And I had envisioned that and sort of held that vision. And I was like, that's really what I want, because I had a practice, a false alarm practice birth where I was having all these really intense, not intense, but Braxton Hicks that felt like labor. So the midwife came over, the midwife's assistant came over. She bought someone else that she was training and she asked if she could do it. And it was just all these women in my house. And I was like, well, this feels like a lot of women. This feels intense. It just felt like a lot of energy in my house, right? And I was sort of disappointed. I wish I didn't say she could come and observe, but my midwife had asked and I had said yes. So I was like, oh well. And I said to my husband, I was like, wow, wouldn't it be incredible if it could just be you and me? It would be so cool. I'm just telling you this because to illustrate a couple different points. One, that which we visualize and hold in our hearts and lift up is likely to manifest. And two, But at the same time, knowing that we can't hold on to that because that can set us up for disappointment also. So sort of like this very relaxed attention on what I was really wanting. And here's the thing, I really, really feel that my prayers and that which I held up, and prayer is just a lifting of the heart, I believe, but that which I lifted up in my heart in trust, in joy, not as a fearful prayer, like, God, please let me have this birth. It was just like an anticipation, almost an expectation, not a presumptuous one, like I'm saying, not a rigid one, but a very relaxed trust. Every single one of those heart petitions, I'll call them, was responded to and heard. And what this did was it also really enhanced my relationship and my connection with my creator, because it helped me to understand that I am seen. These things that are so sacred and so important are important. God just like dropped every single thing that I wanted, not just needed, but like wanted in. So in this way, my births were very, what's the word? Acknowledged. It was like this acknowledgement, and it helped me understand a lot, understand and experience and digest some really important truths that I needed to, that have been really pertinent on my journey and helping me grow. I hope you've walked away with some spark and a gem of that hope and joy and expectation for either a different birth than you've had, or another incredible birth, or a birth that you've never had that you're like, ooh, let's do it. Why not? All right. I think I've talked enough. Until next time, be well. Thank you for tuning in to the Mae B Mindful Podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review. Your feedback helps us grow and improve. For more information, resources, and exclusive content, visit our website at maybemindful.com, or go ahead and follow us over on Instagram at Mae B Mindful. If you enjoyed this week's episode, please give me a follow, screenshot the episode, and go ahead and tag me until next week when I bring you another thought-provoking and inspiring topic. Until then,